Chapter 1818, Heaven's Prayer of Destruction. Demon Godwu is waiting here listlessly. Waiting for what? Of course, he is waiting for the arrival of the human army. Yes, they are playing a game, or perhaps a sacrifice. They have tried everything, but have not found what they are looking for. Legend has it that the great god-level civilizations that chose this path like them. It is said that only they have successfully avoided the fate of reincarnation and will forever exist as extremely advanced civilizations. They need the guidance of the great god-level civilization and their technology to continue their civilization, which is about to decay in history. But until now, they have used almost every means possible and have not come into contact with the great god-level civilization at all. Continuous excavation has only led to the discovery of some relics of little value. Time is running out for them. Perhaps the key to opening the doors lies in the creatures that survive on the surface of the earth, the bacteria and moss on the surface of the planet. But they are so weak, what can they possibly do for us? Does such a sacrifice really make sense? Demon Godwu looked up at the sky. The words of 6 wings echoed in his mind. This was their guess, that it was the changes in this world that had aroused the interest of the great god-level civilization, causing them to open their eyes and observe the entire world. So as a low-level civilization, they had to put on a magnificent show. Come on! Let me see what surprises this era of civilization can create, Demon Godwu said softly. The sky was deathly silent, and the only sound on the ground was the noise of construction workers at work. Within hundreds of miles of the area, everything was within their grasp, but he didn't see any signs of the arrival of humans. Fortunately, he was very patient, because in the countless years of the past, he had also spent his time in this way. Fortunately, he was no longer human, but just a machine. Machines don't get bored. Or so they say. He had even begun to slowly forget the meaning of life, and the sensation of pain had long ago become a physical feeling that his mind had forgotten. The flesh is weak, the machine ascends. They had once thought that they had succeeded and could become eternal. But now they sadly discovered that they had failed. Demon Godwu thought listlessly. But the next moment, a warm feeling came, breaking his solitary thoughts. The sensors alerted him that the temperature around him was rising rapidly. Thermal energy was a common energy reaction, but this energy was so powerful that it was easy to detect. Excitement instantly lit up in Demon Godwu's eyes, and the fluctuations in the electrical signals flowing through his electronic core were more pronounced than usual. He looked up, and all the mechanical life forms in the entire area looked up as well, sensing the powerful force. The sky was dyed a crimson color, the clouds were red as if they had caught fire, and all directions seemed to be engulfed in a raging inferno. Boom! The continuous roaring sound of the sky made the earth tremble wildly. Demon Godwu looked up and saw the object. He cracked his lips, his metal teeth were not for eating, but merely a decoration to preserve some of his form from his time as a carbon-based life form. But at the moment, the expression on his face was not one of anger or panic, but of excitement. In the sky, a meteor of immense size, with a diameter of hundreds of kilometers, was covering the sky, burning with a raging fire, and crashing down in an unstoppable manner. If Zhang Yi had been there, he could have sworn that this must have been one of the most spectacular scenes he had ever seen in his life. Even the explosion of the Reaper of Love, or the battle between the Hades Gatekeeper and White Dragon, were no match for it. The former lacked visual impact, and the latter was over so quickly that Zhang Yi didn't even have time to take it in. Only the landing of this huge meteorite, which was big enough to block out the sky, could make people feel so excited and scared that their souls began to tremble. Demon Godwu crouched on the ruins, supporting himself on all fours, his neck raised high, his mouth open towards the sky. All mechanical civilization did the same thing at the same time. From the mouth of Demon Godwu, a red energy beam shot up into the sky, as if a red mountain had been erected from the earth. Thousands of energy attacks, like a meteor shower flowing back towards the sky, filled the entire earth with a dazzling array of colors. Soon, the thousands of energy attacks, with Demon Godwu's attack at the center, collided with the enormous meteorite. Rumble! The meteorite rubbed against the air, producing a roaring sound, followed by the sound of an explosion. A large number of craters appeared on the meteorite, and large pieces of meteorite debris splattered down and shot in all directions. Some of the meteorite debris was only the size of a palm, while the largest was comparable to a small hill. With such an attack, it was hard to imagine. Demon God Wu concentrated a large number of super-large mechanical life forms and impacted the left corner of the meteorite. It was absolutely unrealistic to try to smash it directly, so his choice was to use the impact to change its trajectory. Sure enough, half of the blasted meteor was affected, and the meteor that was originally falling directly in the center of this area fell sideways. That unimaginably huge meteor collided with the ground in a posture that could be clearly seen from hundreds of miles away, seemingly slowly but actually quickly. The shockwave instantly spread out, and the intense storm also took away almost everything around it. The sound could no longer be heard, and the surrounding area was filled with a huge vacuum created by the shockwave. All that could be seen was the terrifying power mixed with the flames of the atmosphere, which completely destroyed countless mechanical life forms. Demon God Wu dodged this attack, but the shockwave that swept over him still destroyed everything around him. The earth was burning. His defensive force field blocked the impact, but he looked around and couldn't see the enemy anywhere. Was it an accident? Demon God Wu even said this to himself mockingly. Could it really be so unlucky that a meteorite would fall from the sky? But he knew that this was not the Creator's punishment on them. Because they had already abandoned their existence as carbon-based beings, which was a kind of bug, and they had once tried to gain immortality in this way, but ultimately failed. Just then, he suddenly and keenly sensed fluctuations in space. More than 10 kilometers away from him, a huge green door rapidly took shape in midair. Newton led Brian fully armed out of the green space door. Even the white Labrador was fully dressed today, with a green Able Special Forces helmet on its head. Behind them, hundreds of Able Special Forces soldiers walked out, their bodies almost like factory-made uniforms, with little difference in height or build. Seeing the burning earth in front of him, Brian put away the teleportation gun in his hand, and the green space doors behind him closed. I think that should have killed all the mechanical monsters, Brian said with a satisfied air, crossing his arms. It took a lot of effort to use such a cool technique. He poked his claw out, looking like he was inviting praise. The huge falling asteroid was the result of Brian's ability Heaven's Prayer of Destruction. Brian can control gravity, and he can even lift an aircraft carrier effortlessly. But an attack like the one in front of him would take a lot of effort, even for him. After all, first he and Newton had to work together to grab a whole piece of ground from the Earth, and then they had to push it into the atmosphere together in a weightless state. The movement of inorganic objects would not attract the attention of the Mechanical Legion, and their mechanical equipment could not detect celestial bodies without any electronic signals. Moreover, maintaining control of the huge meteor for a long time required Brian to have extremely strong control capabilities. But fortunately, in the end, the result was very successful. They successfully used this trick to clear most of the battlefield, causing the huge Mechanical Legion to lose at least 3/4 of its forces. Hey, Brian, they're not that easy to deal with, Newton, with a deadpan expression, pushed his glasses up his nose and reminded him. He then looked around and sure enough, a warning appeared in his glasses. See, I told you. Demon God Wu and several oversized mechanical life forms appeared opposite them. Newton didn't expect such an attack to be able to directly eliminate the opponent entirely. The target of the meteor was too obvious and would definitely be intercepted, so their original goal was just to use it to clear the field. It seems that the plan is going very well. But the real battle has only just begun. The members of the Able Forces quickly spread out. They are all carrying huge backpacks, and even those backpacks seem heavier than the soldiers themselves. But these soldiers carrying that thing as if they are not affected at all, galloping on the ground, like gusts of wind sweeping through the battlefield that is still burning with raging flames. Soon, they opened their backpacks and took out some huge metal instruments from inside, causing them to flare out like trumpets and point them at the entire battlefield ahead. Fremon's counter-defensive force field instruments, they have also created something similar. As the world's top military and technological power, they could not be unprepared for this. The 5 oversized mechanical life forms all aimed their cannons at them. Demon Godwu looked at these humans and a dog, his alloy teeth touching each other in his mouth, making a sound similar to a maniacal laugh. Without warning, a surging energy cannon fired directly at them. Brian raised his paws and pressed them lightly downward. The energy cannon that had been shooting straight at them suddenly shot straight back down towards the ground like a bent steel bar. Boom! The ground shattered, rocks and soil flew everywhere, and Newton quickly pulled Brian's body back. "Hey, I've made him miss us," Brian said. Newton said coldly, "Next time, when you change direction, please choose to distort his attack upwards." Before they could land successfully, 5 attacks from the oversized mechanical life forms came flying at them. Newton raised the atheist in his hand and pulled the trigger directly, blasting out a cannon shot. The couple's combined strength formed a huge energy net to block the barrage of bullets coming at them. He methodically began to direct the Abbott soldiers in battle over the communication channel. Destroy the 5 oversized mechanical life forms. After removing those minions, they can more easily deal with the Demon Godwu in front of them. Demon Godwu noticed that his attack was distortion attack, and the system determined the ability the opponent possessed, which was to change the direction of force. Combined with the move falling meteor, it can be judged to be the control of gravity. "I see." Demon Godwu's arms reached behind his back, and he took off 2 huge curved swords from his back. The blades were 2-sectioned and resembled giant sickles, but each one of them, when fully extended, looked even bigger than his body. "It looks like he's planning on having a hardy weapon battle with us," Brian said, and surprisingly pulled out a gun, but quickly threw it to the ground. "Forget it, my claws aren't very suitable for using human weapons." Demon Godwu's arms spread out, and the 2 huge curved swords became like the double blades of a cockroach. He became very bulky. The storm surged. His speed was already indistinguishable to the naked eye, and could only be judged by the surging of the endless storm. He was already close to the 2 of them. "I'm not good at fighting, I'm a civilized dog." Brian screamed in fear, but the next moment, his right hand pressed down again. A visible distortion of space occurred in the surrounding area. A tremendous force seemed to come from the sky, crushing everything towards the ground. Overload. The earth crumbled with a loud noise. The body of Demon Godwu was suddenly slammed to the ground as it charged forward. A moment later, it could be seen that the land under Brian and Newton's feet had become an island. Outside the island, in a circular area with a radius of up to 2 kilometers, the ground had sunk tens of meters. This was ground that had already been impacted by a meteor, and was as solid as metal, but it had still been compacted again by Brian's super compression ability. You have to understand that his ability to control gravity is enough to keep a huge meteor in the sky for a long time. "Oh, hey, bro, you'd better rest underground for a while." Brian looked like a cheap slut, swinging his tail proudly and arrogantly. But suddenly, the earth, which was already stronger than metal, suddenly broke apart. A black figure soared into the sky. Demon Godwu held 2 huge sickles in his hands, which extended with a swoosh sound and slashed at Brian. "Shit!" Brian was a little panicked, but soon he opened his claws, 1,000 times the gravity. A huge force enveloped the top of Demon Godwu's head, hard pressing his body and smashing him down onto the ground. The body of the Demon Godwu was once again smashed into the ground. But this time, he quickly climbed up with a grin. Brian shouted in alarm, "Damn it, this guy is made of iron all over. If he were human, he would have been crushed into mincemeat a long time ago." Newton had already ignored Brian. He glanced at Brian and activated the propulsion system of his combat suit and flew off into the distance. He was going to deal with those oversized mechanical life forms. "Okay, then you can deal with this guy." Brian was a little panicked when he saw Newton leave without looking back. "Hey, bro, you can't just leave me here alone." "Dog. You know, I'm a pacifist, I don't like fighting. Behind him, the earth was burning, along with the huge meteor embedded in it and countless broken mechanical life forms, silently accusing him of his absurd remarks. Brian, you're a fucking white bishop-level strange dog. Stop whining here. Newton couldn't help but scold him fiercely. Don't always look pitiful, I won't really take you for a dog. Brian stared after Newton as he left without looking back, his ears drooping and his face showing a little disappointment. I don't want to be like this either. If I could choose, I'd rather be a quiet and beautiful dog. Of course, it would be best if I could have a few beautiful female dogs to keep me company. At this moment, the earth trembled wildly. Demon God Wu stood up with great pressure, and his laughter of madness reached Brian's ears. Ha ha. Interesting. Is this the power that creatures like you possess? It is indeed strange, but to me, it is of no use. He told Brian in human language, the material used to forge me is an alloy melted from the deepest substance in the Earth's core. With the pressure you exert, it cannot harm me. Brian swallowed, then his gaze became determined for an instant. Fine, damn Newton has abandoned me, now I have to fight for myself. He swung his large claws down with all his might, 2,000 times gravity. An even more powerful gravity enveloped the demon God Wu. His body bent down sharply, his waist bending to 90 degrees. But soon, having adapted to the force, he stood up again, his eyes full of brutal murderous intent. He had not felt like this for a long time. He remembered when he was still flesh and blood, a berserker who was passionate about killing. Being suppressed time and time again by Brian's power had awakened his fighting spirit, which he had forgotten for many years. I want to chop you into pieces. Brian roared, 5,000 times gravity. 8,000 times gravity. 10,000 times gravity. He kept increasing the pressure, and the increasingly powerful force caused the body of the demon God Wu to sink rapidly into the depths of the earth. It was hard to imagine that the soil could be compressed to such an extent. And every time he was suppressed, the body of the demon God Wu would quickly adjust the power output to allow him to adapt to the pressure Brian was exerting. After all, he was a mechanical body, not flesh and blood. As long as he could output enough power to adapt to this gravity, then everything would be fine. This is bad. Seeing that his own abilities could not crush demon God Wu into pieces, Brian backed up a few steps in some panic, his dog paws helplessly scratching at the ground. Ha! Demon God Wu broke through his gravitational field, his twin swords glowing with a cold light as he charged straight at Brian. Brian screamed, "Damn it, I told you I can't fight." In a panic, he pointed his hands at Demon God Wu. Demon God Wu sneered, "It's useless, I've adapted to your power a long time ago. Now, let me chop you into pieces." Brian's mind was in a state of chaos. But in desperation, a flash of inspiration came to his mind, and his gaze became determined in an instant, releasing 100% of his power. Whoosh! A black light disappeared from in front of him, drawing a straight black line in the air before soaring into the sky and turning into a shining star. Brian covered his eyes with one hand and let out a relieved breath as he watched Demon God Wu being sent away by himself. Phew! That really scared me. Luckily, I can not only increase gravity, but also decrease it. Demon God Wu, who had been operating under gravity 1,000,000 times stronger, was thrown into the sky by Brian after the gravity was increased and then decreased. Judging from the amount of force he used at the time, the speed could reach the first cosmic speed and orbit the planet. Brian knew that guy wouldn't be back for a while, so he sprinted in the direction of where Newton was. A dog is a dog after all, and although it is running on its hind legs, it is still very fast. Newton, wait for me. I think we can still talk. That guy is too hard. I'm not a scrapyard, I don't have a compressor to flatten him. Brian followed Newton and ranted furiously. Newton raised his glasses, let's deal with those big guys first. At this time, the soldiers of the Albert Army had surrounded the area in front of the super-large mechanical life form. The super-large mechanical life form's attack power was extremely strong. The powerful laser cannons swept recklessly across the ground, directly tearing it apart, leaving huge gaps. However, the soldiers of the Albert army were extremely agile. In the face of the super-large mechanical lifeforms' attacks, they were able to dodge very nimbly. Their speed was even faster than the average enhancement mutant. If only some of the able warriors were like this, it would be fine, but all of the able warriors in front of them were like this. A faint red glow shone in their eyes, like streaks of lightning racing across the battlefield. Facing the mechanical lifeforms blocking their path, they drew their weapons cleanly. Huge, specially made shoulder cannons, pistols, great swords in the shape of a cross, and machetes exerted powerful effects in their hands. They even used close-quarter combat to directly dismantle those steel and iron guys. The attack power of the super-large mechanical lifeforms is no joke, and the energy rays that raged across the battlefield like cobwebs still cut some able warriors into pieces. However, a creepy scene unfolded. Their broken bodies fell to the ground, but instead of dying immediately, the falling flesh all wriggled violently. The flesh wriggled on the ground like a reptile, automatically piecing itself back together. The injured able warriors did not show the slightest fear of death on their faces. Instead, they became even more excited due to their injuries, and their eyes burst into an even more reddish glow. Even if their heads were cut off in half, they were able to quickly pick up the other half, put it back together, and then quickly fuse their broken bodies back together.